I'm personally really happy about this video, as it has to do with something that I want to play with for a long time. But I guess before we begin, I should probably address the elephant in the room.
Hello there.
Overused joke concerning idiom, check. So, the main difference would be that I'm speaking in English instead of my mother tongue like in my previous videos. And the reason for that is that knowledge should be spread as much as it can, and what better way than by using the global language. If, however, this is your first video of mine that you're watching, never mind all that. This video is most likely not going to be very long, but today's topic is about a metal called bismuth. Now, you'd be forgiven if you mistook a bismuth vein for a tin or a lead one, as it was a common mistake during our ancient times as well. Those silly ancestors and their lack of knowledge and the differences between each chemical element. So, in case you haven't come across bismuth during one of your late night hours browsing the net, or are a time-traveling Mesopotamian miner, which can also understand modern English for some reason, let me give you a synopsis of its characteristics. Bismuth is a white metal with silver-pink hues in its natural state, albeit a brittle one, with a melting point at around 251.5 degrees Celsius, which is in the same temperature range as tin and lead. So your confusion is completely justified, my dear Mesopotamian viewer. It is also diamagnetic like the other two, which means that it produces a repelling force when subjected to a magnetic field. One could then assume that they would be indistinguishable from each other unless we had the means to look directly into their atomic structures, right?
No!
As I mentioned, bismuth has a low melting point, and after a piece of it becomes liquid, it gets oxidized, meaning coming into contact with the oxygen molecules like the ones that we breathe. Something wonderful happens. It forms crystals. According to my sources, the first one that caught on to this were the Egyptians, as they kept using bismuth for cosmetic purposes, a tradition that's now being carried by the currents of the world, while the rest of the ancient civilizations used it to create better alloys for their armaments. It was also considered the element with the highest atomic mass that is stable, until 2003 that is, because then it was found out that it can also experience radioactive decay. At this point, you might ask yourself, or me by screaming at your screen, why my fellow primate and I are playing with such a material and with no safety measures taken at all. The answer is that even though bismuth is radioactive, it has a half-life of more than 1 billion times the current age of the universe. So that will be 13.8 billion years, for half the amount that I have to decay into radiation. And for the blip that is an average human life, or our civilization as a whole, it can practically be considered safe and stable to use. In recent years, we have also begun substituting lead for bismuth, because lead is so deadly that if there are more than 100 milligrams of it in a cubic meter and you inhale some of them, you'll be facing at least some health issues in the future. In contrast, if you inhale a similar amount of bismuth particles, you'll just have sparkling farts or something. Joke about bodily functions, check. But let's get to the yolk of this proverbial egg and talk about the crystallization of bismuth. The first thing one notices about them are the myriad of colors and hues that these crystals have. The mechanism behind that is called iridescence, and what happens is that as bismuth crystallizes, its atoms begin to form the layers of its crystals. And because there's nothing that can be considered perfect in this world, the layers can have minute differences between them, which are invisible to our naked eye, but large enough for photons to diffract in different wavelengths, producing all these hues. For that reason, I dub bismuth the drag queen of all elements. The same phenomenon is responsible for the colors of soap bubbles, oil spills, or your old CD collection that is now used to scare birds from your balcony. It's also the reason for the color blue in a lot of the animal species around the globe, but that's a topic for another time. Unfortunately, due to our lab equipment constituting only of our portable gas burner, a coffee pot, a few metallic containers that are mainly used for creme caramel, and 2 simian brains, we weren't able to produce the desired results all the time, but it's still fun playing with liquid metal, and we still managed to produce some stunning crystals. Moving on towards the actual structure itself, bismuth crystals form a peculiar shape. To me, they look like cubes that have consecutive parts of their structures removed, but I've heard from a lot of people that they look like stairs. To them I say, you're boring. Yeah, okay, they kinda look like stairs, I guess.
Anyway, how is your sex life?
Can't complain, Tommy. Thank you for asking. This kind of crystalline structure is called a hopper crystal and gets that name from Edward James Hopper, who loved going to his daily business, hopping around the countryside, going down his daily path, meeting rabbits and greeting them every day, topping his hat to them and saying good day, my dear rabbit. They got that name because they look like the outline of a part of a pyramidal hopper. You might be surprised to know that the physics behind this formation are the same as the ones that produce snowflakes, because they both follow a dendritic structure. This means that these crystals develop with a multi-branching tree-like form that begins from a central stem, if you will, and the rest expand from that column. The difference with bismuth is that the electrical attraction is greater on the edge of the crystal, which causes a faster growth rate there than in the face centers, creating these miniature Lovecraftian landscapes. Despite its optical pizzazz, bismuth is used for the aforementioned lead replacement, creation of alloys, and current preparing trinkets for the end of times, and it's also been used for pharmaceutical purposes, which I'm going to mention in descending order. It's an active ingredient in a compound used to treat eye infections, like the ones you get if you scratch your crotch first. It can fight off bacteria that cause ulcers, and it was also used to treat syphilis, so you could certainly look for a 2-in-1 medicine from the pharmacist for your eye infection too. Lastly, it is used as an anti-diarrheal and as an internal deodorant for one's farts and feces, but I checked and you don't get sparkling farts. Callback joke, check. This is the part where I would usually offer some personal opinions of mine for the video's topic, but after pondering on this section for a while, I've reached the conclusion that I have nothing. Some things are just cool for what they are by themselves, without a voice in the internet telling you so, and personally I'm always amazed by nature. So I decided to end the video like this. Check, check.